Salvete discipuli. Today we are going to do chapter 35 in Wheelock's Latin. As I'm sure you can tell, I've actually got a little bit of a cold um, in this video, unfortunately. But hey, as they say in the biz, the show must go on, and so shall Miss F. Okay, this chapter deals with three new uses of the dative. These are actually fairly common sense uses of the dative, especially if you consider the dative and its translation to or for. There are certain adjectives that will take a dative. Some special verbs that instead of taking an accusative as a direct object will take the dative with special verbs. And there are some compound verbs, meaning a verb with a prefix added onto it, that will also take a dative instead of an accusative, or sometimes in addition to an accusative, but we'll get there. Okay, so dative with adjectives is used with certain adjectives to indicate the figurative direction in which the adjective applies. Some common adjectives that will take this dative are similis, simile, fidelis, fidela, amicus, amica, amicum, carus, cara, carum, par, parus. And again, if you think about the way that the dative functions, the dative does show figurative direction, right? It doesn't show place to which, that's accusative. But it does show the figurative direction when it's used as an indirect object as well. You know, I give a rose to my friend. The figurative direction there, the indirect object would be to my friend. So I have some examples. So, ladies, make sure that you are writing down these sentences in Latin, and that you're also writing down the translation. I will check your notes tomorrow, so make sure you have both down. Ira magna similis furori est. This furori is the dative. So great anger is similar furori to madness. Fidelis, tyrannus voluit omnes fideles sibi esse. The tyrant wants all to be faithful to him. And again, the sibi is the dative here. Going with fideles. Caesar amicus plebibus antiquis erat. Caesar was friendly towards the ancient plebs, yes, so on and so forth. Nepos meus caras mihi estet erit. So my grandson is and will be dear to me. The mihi here being the dative. And then this last one's actually an example from a Catullus poem, Catullus 51. Ele mi par esse deo videtur. So he seems, me is actually a contraction of mihi, so that is dative. He seems to me, esse, to be par, equal to a deo, a god. Okay? All right, so the next special dative that you need to learn is dative with the special verbs. This is essentially where instead of these verbs taking an accusative, they're going to take this dative with the special verbs. That's why, you know, the technical definition is that the dative is the thing, the person or the thing to which these special verbs apply. And so why they take the dative is because the first definition retains the quote unquote to that indicates the dative. And you'll see this when we go over the vocab words for these. Idiomatic translations use the dative as essentially an accusative. So, for example, if you look at the top of the second column, pareo means to obey, but its sort of first definition is to give obedience to, right? Placio, to please, but its first definition is really to be pleasing to. So we have that to in there that's so indicative of the dative, okay? These are some very common special verbs that will take the dative. So credo, to believe, ignosco, to pardon, impero, to command, knockeo, to harm, nubo, to marry, parco, to spare, pario, to obey, persuadio, to persuade. That one's pretty straightforward. Placio, to please, servio, to serve. This is why I have always been so hard on you guys not to translate servare as to serve. That one is to protect, because there is another verb, servio, which means to serve, and studio, to study. Okay, so I have some examples here. Stultus solus omnibus credit. So only a fool believes everything. And again, we have this special verb credo that takes the dative. So omnibus is dative. Only a fool believes everything. Here we go. Oops. Let's go back. Okay, so only a fool. Here we go. We got our special dative here. Marcus Antonius capite manibusque ciceronam prevans rei publicae nacuit. So Mark Antony removing or depriving Cicero of his head and hands harmed the republic. Rei publicae here being your dative, because nacuit, to harm, knockio, takes the dative with the special verbs and not an accusative. Parcite peccatoribus said numquam eis creditas. So spare sinners, but never believe them. And here we have two dative with the special verbs, right? We have peccatoribus, because parco, to spare, parcere, I should say, takes a dative, but so does credo. So spare the sinners, but never believe them. All right, and then our last one, nemo feminae persuadie patuit nautai malo nubere. So another one that has two of these in here. No one was able to persuade the woman, and again, dative, because persuadio takes it, to marry the bad sailor. And again, nautai malo is dative, because to marry takes the dative. Okay. All right, the last one that we need to talk about is dative with the compound verb. So a compound verb is a verb that has a prefix on it. And these prefixes are the same as the prepositions. So some common prefixes onto verbs are odd, which can assimilate, so it can become off, and so on and so forth. Ante, con, which comes from cum, in, inter, ob, post, pri, pro, sub, and super. Okay. Now, not every compound verb is going to take dative with the compound verb. It's only if the prefix changes the meaning of the word significantly from the meaning of the root verb. Okay, so if the compound doesn't really change it very much. So think of the difference between uo and oduo. Uo means to help, oduo means to help. So that takes an accusative, direct object, as you would expect, because the prefix didn't change the meaning of the verb significantly. However, if it does, you have instead of the accusative direct object, you'll have dative with the compound verb. Okay, so sequor sequi means to follow, but if you put the ob on there, and you get obsequor obsequi, it changes it to obey, which is a significant change, which means if you want to translate sequor eam, well, sequor takes an accusative, sequor, I will follow him. And you might notice my feelings on this particular ugh, icky, icky thing to say. But even ickier is if you say obsequar eo, I will obey him. Now, not only is that an ickier sentence to say, but it also changes the am of the accusative to ao, dative of the compound verb. Same with pono, ponera, right? That means to place, but antepono, anteponera means to prefer. And that's a significant enough change that you're going to have dative with the compound verb. Now, the last thing you need to know is that sometimes one of these compound verbs can take an accusative direct object and a dative with the compound verb. Because you have the prefix kind of acting like a preposition, but not really. It's a prefix, not a preposition. And you can tell that because, of course, the word that it's going to be dative, right? The dative with the compound verb is not going to be in the case that that preposition would usually take. So, for example, sapientes facta verbis anteponant. Okay, so sapientes, wise people, wise men, prefer deeds to words. And again, we have here a direct object and a dative of the compound verb. And again, it's if you were to translate this ante ponant, they place deeds before words. You can see it a little bit better, although ante, if used as a preposition, of course, takes the accusative and not the dative. So it's just one of those things you have to be on the lookout for. If you were looking, trying to figure out why this is in the dative, it's in the dative because it's being used with a compound verb. Okay? All right, take good notes. I will see you in class tomorrow, and I hope you have a lovely evening.